Hi, Chris Duff over at Serious Land Capital, vacant land funding partner. I'm trying to orient where my face is supposed to be on the screen because every time that I'm having my team chop up for reels, it seems to be cutting off a bit. So I'm trying to figure out where that placement is. Experiment. Hopefully, this one today isn't fully off screen when I try this side here. So I had a whole podcast lined up for today on additional market updates. Obviously, I've been writing about that in the newsletter the past couple weeks and been polling some other land investors. Been getting a mix of responses here. So I'm going to actually save that till tomorrow. Some pretty interesting findings on that. More because I wanted to talk about ethics, actually. And so I think it's probably a topic that is not discussed enough. So to kind of set the scene here, I know I've mentioned all these AI pushes been making lately, which again has just been tremendous, and been feeling less burnt out just by knowing and already starting to experience some of the potential and workflow updates that are just helping out a ton. So I had joined that Automate to Accelerate with Callan. Again, know Callan personally, spent a lot of time in person together. I have no affiliate relationship or anything. I just think she does incredible work and is getting very, very well rewarded for her dedication and focus within that space. I always want to learn from people who are on the cutting edge of areas that I think are only going to serve our business. So I'm more than happy to, pay to play when it matters with people I think are really delivering exceptional value. So, it's just charging, it depends on you if you're on a payment plan or upfront, like roughly 7,500, $8,000 for the 10-week course. And somebody reached out to me. I don't know how they might have suspected. Maybe they were just blindly reaching out to everybody in Callan's Facebook group. They're like, because the way Callan set it up is, you basically buy your seat within her program for your business, and then there's 2 additional slots for free that you can bring on, 2 other members of your business, so everybody can kind of learn the techniques and build the business forward. And then you can also buy like additional seats for your business if you want more people to attend. So this person reached out, and I only had one core business member that I felt was appropriate to bring along here. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to use this other seat available, at least at the moment. And somebody reached out like, hey, do you have another seat available? And I thought they were reaching out like, okay, they were looking to bring on another team member. They already used their other 2 seats, and didn't want to pay the extra like $500 or whatever for bringing on an extra team member. Like, I didn't think that much about it. And so I just responded, yeah, for, hey, like, I'm not sure yet, but I might have an extra seat. But then this person was like, oh, wow, cool. Yeah, I'd love to buy one off you. I can't justify paying the full price of the program. And that took me aback a bit, because the understanding here was that these extra seats were available for other members of your business, and that all of these various AI programs that we were getting the assistance from Callan's team, it was going to be like one per business, like one brand manager and so forth. But all of a sudden, like, if you have some shenanigans going on behind the scenes where people are splitting seats, but they're all different businesses, then you're all of a sudden getting like 2 for the price of 1, 3 for the price of 1, which I don't think was the intention of the program. So it didn't feel right for me, like ethically. Like, it kind of rocked me. Yeah, I think every person, like, they have different parts of their brain just immediately think like, part of me is just like a numbers guy, just always capitalist thinking, or it's like somebody's looking for a seat, chop down the price, $2,500 through. It's a tough economy, and you start rationalizing down these pathways, just like automatically. It's just, but you don't always have to believe all the thoughts going in you. It's just thoughts flow, whatever. They don't have to be good, bad, whatever. You don't need to shame yourself from what's going through your mind. Just saying like, okay, you can have multiple parallel tracks. But like, the overwhelming one was, wait a second, this is not right here. Once you enter into what's the Daniel Kahneman ways of thinking. There's a type 1 brain, type 2. I'm probably butchering it, but I think it's type 2 brains where you thinking fast and slow. So you want to be thinking slower here in a situation like that. And so like my brain settled in for a second and like, okay, this is not right. Callan's a friend of mine, especially too. And I would not feel comfortable at all entertaining this further in the remotest. And that was like it didn't take me long to arrive at that conclusion, within like a minute of actually thinking about the implications. But it's not that often that you're like put into a more ethical dilemma. For most business owners, I think, fortunately we try to keep things above board as much as possible, and we're not like routinely put in positions where, hey, you actually have to think through a specific scenario like this, or at least not as much on our side. Currently, probably the bigger you get, the more you have to encounter these, but maybe even the opposite, actually. I don't know. I'd have to think a bit more about that. But nevertheless, not a routine thing that comes up into our daily line of work. Again, I trust to know Callan a lot. I had sent her over a text. And I'm like, hey, just FYI, someone was, and I'm not mentioning any names here, not throwing anyone under the bus. They haven't done anything wrong. In hard facts, they're asking, they're trying to figure stuff out. So like, hey, this person reached out to me, was sniffing around for a seat, did not feel good ethically here. Like maybe your team, this is a suggestion. You might want to audit the seats, make sure like, everybody signing up are all within the same business. And Callan, to her credit, like right away was, appreciate this, and hey, I'm going to add like an extra legal clause to ensure it's all the same businesses. And that was the appropriate way to handle it. Like that's gonna let me sleep better at night and just move on from that scenario. And that one probably is like, it's like easier, right? There was like a pretty clear right and wrong there, but you still, a decision was needed to be made. I think it was a Warren Buffett quote where it's like the three legs on the stool, for anybody in business, take competence, ability to work hard, ethics, and pick two at most, and you'll be lucky to find even one, is the extra caveat there. And I try to think about that quote a lot. And I think especially for competence and hardworking, all those three, like everybody listening to this should be able to fit all three of those. Why only pick two, or even just like pick one? But I think like the higher levels within business that you get to, especially on competence and hardworking, it's like, oh wow, I thought I was competent in this area, but the deeper I get in the higher levels I get, like, wow, I was not nearly as well informed as I thought. Or even on like the hardworking side, it's like, yeah, I thought it's putting on all these hours and so forth, but I was not levering myself properly and actually not working nearly as hard as other people at a different level here. And those things like you can accept if you really want to succeed and get to that next step along your career. Whereas ethics, that one, I think it's more people would have like a instant reaction of feeling offended if they were looking at other operators and seeing like there was extra levels to being ethical, where a lot of people think it's like just like black or white in terms of are you ethical or not. But I think it's also that there's a spectrum to it, just like being competent or hardworking. Like, can you be an even more ethical operator, and are people playing at a higher level than you? And is that something you can accept? So that's another question I try to ask myself a lot too. And sometimes ethics can be, explained away with ignorances too. There have to be consequences for ignorance. Like if you accidentally murder somebody in an extreme case, like you have to face the consequences of that, whether you intended to or not. And same with areas within business. When we were very early on within our land investing career, I mean, it's a very small property, as like $1,000 type of flips, like way way earlier on, and we were self-closing these and self-marketing, taking care of the title docs, directly to the county clerk and so forth. And there was one there was errors involved and so forth that we did not understand the process for how to like properly run a whole affidavit of heirship type situation. And we only realized once we actually got more experience in the company and like actually working with title companies and so forth that, hey, wow, we actually acquired this property and then sold it when we technically didn't even own it. We didn't realize it at the time. Like, it was an ignorant situation. And again, mea culpa on our side. Fortunately, it was like a very inexpensive property there. But that technically was not an ethical thing to do. But it can also be explained by it was admittedly an honest mistake. And if we were repeating that knowingly going forward, which we have not, FYI, that would be a much bigger black mark on our reputation, right? But it's still something I think about. I don't feel good about that even happening, even though it was just from like flat out, did not know what we were doing and assumed we did. So that's just like kind of an example of where, you can learn from your mistakes, but then how do you, operate at an even higher level the next time around? And, can you possibly rectify some of those past mistakes even better? I don't know. I'm getting a little too metaphysical here at the end, but I think that's the nature of ethics. So I know this pod's getting a little long here, but just wanted to share that example from today and how it made me think of that third leg on the stool again, and how maybe you can reflect on your own side. Like, can you accept that maybe you're not at a peak ethical level? Is there just another another level in the game to reach to? I think that way as well. Even though we think we have an excellent reputation, we try to treat people right and not BS anybody, follow the letter to the law. But there's always gray areas sometimes, whether you encounter them via ignorance or not, or desperation within the business, trying to stay alive, tough economy, etc. Like, you got a lot of factors that weigh on there, and sometimes you're going to encounter certain situations where you really have to think hard about which way you want to come out of it, and what's going to allow you to sleep more at night. So hopefully this is helpful as you consider other situations that might come up on a day-to-day basis for yourself. This one is kind of fun to think about outside of just kind of the raw numbers. Might do something more along this line too. Let me know if you want to hear more on these type of topics. With that, seriousland.capital for any of your funding needs. Zero cost review of your land deals at Land Daily Diligence Facebook group Mondays and Thursdays, and then landpricer.ai. We are cruising through our engineering process. More to come here shortly. Subscribe and share if you haven't already, or you can just share again. That would be much appreciated. Looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye.